Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call to order this special board of finance meeting for Monday, May 22nd at 5:59 p.m. And we are gathered to go through a number of the remaining departmental budgets that we have not yet reviewed on the prior three marvelous nights in May. So thank you for joining for this discussion. I would welcome a motion on the agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Second by Councilor Barlow. Any discussion on the agenda? There is a public forum on the agenda, and we will come to that in a moment. If there's no discussion, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. So the next item is the public forum, and why don't you guys come see if you can start over this show. Bruce and Cindy. All right. And then we have one comment online. So we have a lot to do tonight, so I appreciate you kind of keep it to 2 or 3 minutes, but.
So I'm Bruce Wilson, and I'm a director of our Art So Wonderful. This one is our art gallery in the University Mall. There's 60% of murals and volunteers through our Art So Wonderful program. We created Art So Wonderful electric boxes. You'll see all those cool boxes. We're our partners, and we have education on the arts. So we're very happy that the city CEDO have chosen Art So Wonderful to design and create art down on the waterfront near the Moran frame. It's called the Friends of Moran Fence, and we've been doing this Burlington electric fence for also the Moran frame. And what we're going to be doing there is putting like if you've seen like a construction site and it has canvas around it so the dust don't go into the next neighborhood, that's what we're going to be putting on this around that neighborhood, around that fence. It's 104 feet long, and it's going to be a part of the Juneteenth event because we want the community to be a part of actually painting that canvas, right here. I think it's going to be right alleyway down this BCA City Hall. And so we're very excited about it, and we created a dialogue to go with it. It's like a program for people. Because one thing that we do, if we are so wonderful, we have a graffiti abatement program since 2003. We actually created the graffiti abatement program for the city of Burlington, Community Justice Center. And what we do is, if you see a lot of us out there cleaning graffiti, along with Bill Ward, it's because we want to see make it beautiful, Burlington beautiful. We put murals in this place. We don't put murals on nowheres that don't have graffiti on. Like you see Black Lives Matter and all these murals you see in us through our program. And so we will have education program that we're going to have, and we always had to have individuals who what they call bomb the wall, be a part of helping clean it up, and then come be a part of our art program, and then showcase their art in our art gallery and to sell. So we want to educate them on that. And then through our dialogue with Daniel, we'll talk about it's about how can we help them understand the thinking and put them at risk, as well as the community and the call factors. So I think I said enough. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bruce, for setting the stage. I'm really delighted to be collaborating with Bruce and Art So Wonderful on this. My own company is Community Wealth Development, and like Bruce said, we're going to be connecting a dialogue to this project, and we actually wanted to extend that invitation for anyone on the City Council to participate in the dialogue. If you're interested, it's on June 25th. So we're doing the first part of this with the art project on Juneteenth, where the community will be a part of painting these canvas murals during the Juneteenth celebrations. And then as a part of the dialogue, the participants of the dialogue will actually be installing the canvases down on the fence on the waterfront. And the conversation can be centered on community, what it means to be in community, and trying to build a collective understanding of our experience of what it means to be in community with each other. And so we wanted to just share that with the council tonight and extend that invitation and let you know that we're working hard to try and build peace here in Burlington.
Very good. All right. Thank you both for coming out and sharing that.
Thanks.
And thank you for your efforts, Mark. So it's exciting to see community activity around Brand. Okay, we have one more hand raised from a participant online, former councilor Sharon Butcher. We should be able to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there was a way to get a link to what was just stated, that would be wonderful. I could hear most of it, not all of it, but it sounded like the community, not only the council, would like to know about this. So anyways, but I didn't call in for that because I didn't know that was going to happen. I have a couple of comments about the budget presentations tonight. So I looked them over and these are things that I couldn't answer for myself. Under regional, the VNA is not funded anymore. And I just wondered if it's called something else. I know it morphed into some other facility. So I just wondered why that wasn't funded. There was a reduction in the cable funding, and I couldn't figure out if that's because it wasn't utilized to the full extent last year. And that's why that dollar amount, these are not big dollars, but still important dollars because they go to people who need the services. And then the last item under regional was Boys and Girls Club. That's been a constant at $6,000. I just know how much we get from that money that we donate to them. And I wasn't sure if anyone if they had asked for more and if we could give more to them. So it's always well spent. Other comment under workforce budget, when I went to pull it up, I got the CETO budget of Brian Pine. I couldn't seem to get Kara's budget. I don't know if that's a problem with my link, but anyways, I just wanted to let you know. The last comment has got to do with the Parks and Rec budget. When Catherine did an overview of the budget, she mentioned that there was a $2.5 million deficit, and there was discussion about maybe calling up 1.1 million because of you have charter authority without going to the voters. I'm concerned about that, but I couldn't in the presentation or in the table, I couldn't figure out where the core of this deficit came from. And so I was concerned about that. In the budget itself, in the presentation, it talks about stabilizing Memorial Auditorium. There are words, but there's nothing, there's no plan that goes along with that. And I could only see like $32,000 for utilities, et cetera. So I couldn't see the monies that are associated with that statement. In the Open Space Protection Fund, which is near and dear to my heart, there was a talk about looking at how to reallocate the percent of monies that are dedicated. I have some concerns about that, and that probably won't happen during this budget session, but if it did, my druthers is that this was voted by the residents of Burlington to preserve open space rather than have it developed. And I would question whether we need to go back to the voters if it's significant change. And I think that's it. So thank you for listening to me, and I will listen intently. These presentations really help the residents of Burlington understand your priorities and how our tax dollars are spent. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sharon. Thank you for calling in. Okay, if there, well, I'm gonna make sure, is there anyone else in the room who is interested in speaking? I'm got a pretty full room, but I'm not seeing anyone interested in that, and then checking online, seeing no more raised hands, so we're gonna close the public forum, and we will go to item 3.01, which is the Burlington Parks Recreation Water Fund. department and welcome Director Cindy White. Take it away, Cindy.
Right. We gotta kind of share. All right, so great. It's great to be here. I've been attending all of them, trying to get tips and tricks. So hopefully I've answered all of your questions in my slide, because I've heard all the questions. Starting out, I've got my rest of my team. There's hiding in back, our leadership team. But they're copying me up from behind. You've got Aaron Rose, our waterfront superintendent, Deputy harbor master. So we saw Eric Park, comprehensive planner, Gary Lager, recreation superintendent, and Melissa Heath, the recreation facility superintendent. Derek Roach, his wife had to suddenly get down to Massachusetts to help with some family, so he's in charge of dad's, so he's not able to make it. But hopefully, if there's any questions you guys ask me that I can answer, I know they can. All right, so we have 7 system themes that came out of our 2015 comprehensive plan that really guide the work that we do. And then we also have department values, and those are values that are important to us and that we think about every day with the work that we're doing. As a leadership team, we decided that we would focus on accessibility and inclusivity as we look to the goals in each of the various areas. And our FY24, some of those values that we put down, I just want to highlight a few of them. I know you guys have had a chance to read this all ahead of time. Is updating our website to ensure that we meet the language standards for people that are coming to a website for accessibility. We've made sure to budget for portalets at our parks. You know, we don't have the ability to have flush toilets at every park because we don't have those facilities. But we do try to make sure that we have them in portalets in as many parks as we can. And that's something that we've been good about holding that steady with. Another final one there, just really exciting to us, is this 5 in 5 years playground campaign. That's something with the Parks Foundation has voted to take on. We had a miss at Callahan that we own. As far as accessibility goes, we're hitting it strongly with Oakledge. And so this 5 in 5 years playground campaign will allow us to make sure that we have the appropriate surfacing, the port and play surfacing at the next 5 playgrounds that we put in across the city. And then also that universal design. So that's a campaign again that will be coming with the Parks Foundation. So stay tuned. I'm sure we'll be hitting going for money. Not necessarily as individuals, we have the city council. Savings held from FY22 that we put in here because we had to make a fair amount of cuts at that time. Our professional training, we've continued to hold that. It was 50% cut in FY22. Repair and maintenance was a line that we had to make some different cuts on, but we received some money from the what is the fund balance there? The assigned fund balance. It was the unassigned fund balance, but then it became the assigned fund balance. And we will continue to use some of that money from FY23 into FY24 that helped us with that line there. And then telecommunications, that's something that we really dove into to see who really does lead a landline and who doesn't need a landline. And we continued that work and made some additional cuts, or I shouldn't say cuts, we made some additional slimming there. We did have thoughts. I asked because that was one of the questions that came up was, you did not put it that way, but I like to think about that as what if there was a money tree? My husband occasionally sends me a tree with money flowing off of it when I'm having budget flows. And a lot of it is staffing, you know, just staffing so that we can do this higher level of care in all of our parks and all of our facilities. Our waterfront team has really grown with the urban park rangers, so support there. And we had a lot of fun with the last one. We all dream of a pool. So department revenue, getting to past Councilor Sharon Busher's comments. We have some slides here on our revenue because it has come up as a talking point. And we have, you can see as an obvious when COVID hit, that was a big drop to our budget. We have been increasing it. And one of the things that just know is that we really took to heart last year, the mayor and CEO Shad really pushed us on our revenue. They said, you guys need to really get back to those FY19 numbers, try to at least strive for it. And we really worked hard at it. You know, we increased fees across the board. We tried to find other grant funding, new programming that we could do with the fact that our recreation team came back strong. They were frozen during COVID. I think they were about half of their capacity, if not less. for a while there, and so we've worked on it. And there's been some areas that have come back stronger than others. If our numbers for June of 2022 are we hit June 2022 numbers, we will hit that budget that we was set out for us, and I think as set for us as a challenge. And we really again worked hard. It was I don't think there was tears along the way, but there was definitely a little consternation because you feel like you're always trying to make things affordable, but we have good scholarship programs, and we really thought about where we increase those fees. Lots of talk about voters, and so I wanted to have some really specific slides on these are transient voters. So you probably realize there's such a thing as seasonal voters and there's transient voters. Your transient voters are those that come in to spend the night. They generally 60% of them come to us from Canada. They come in, they stay at our restaurants, they go shop at our shops. I think that we had some AI type at one point, placemaking IAI that showed how many of them go from the waterfront to Church Street. So these are people who are spending money in our city. In 2019, you can see that's when we had a little dip in our transient voters. That's when Burlington Harbor Marina opened, and they also do transient voters. So that was a little competition for us, and we felt it. 2020-21, the border closed. As I just noted, about 60% of our voters come from Canada. You can't make them up. Like our campground, as you'll see from another slide, we did fantastic with the campground. They came in from all over the country. It was the first time to get all 50 states when we opened up in 21. I do have new numbers. Jack Wallace sent me some numbers because I was like, hey, Jack, any chance you could send me the numbers from 19, 20, and 21? And I did. He sent those today. And so one of the things he notes for 2022 is those were like reservations, not actual voter nights. And so that number there, 2022, goes up to 2,858 total voters. And then in FY19, if you add his numbers in, that was 2,545. So what it basically I see is that it's word out that BTV has capacity. So we now are having more people coming to Burlington in our harbor. What it does not include is data from Ferry Dock Marina. That's a private marina that we don't have data on. They did indicate to me at one point that when they had their huge expansion that they had, is they did not increase the number of seasonal or transit slips. They are focused more on being a seasonal slip marina. But again, great numbers, and but it's one of those things at times we will be needing to address because that means we just have that many voters in our harbor, and a little bit more conflict there as far as being harbor masters. Here's our waterfront main revenue areas. Again, I'm a little bit more focused on revenue because it did come up about our revenue, and I was kind of wondering like what happened there. But a lot of it is just the fact that we get a lot of money in at the end of the year. Our marina slips are seasonal slips. We bill their final payment comes in at towards the end of the year, and then we also take a fair amount of money in May and June. Our campground opened May 1st, and our marina opened May 15th. We take in a lot of money for Memorial Day weekend. I imagine both places are booked solid. So what you'll see there is our campground sites. We've already met our budget for FY23. If you look in New World, it might not be showing. There was a little bit of we have new software with our campground, and so just getting that new software aligned. That the campgrounds, if you look at the budget, it showed that it's still $0 for campground reservations this spring. But that is something that we are already working on. Sounds like Friday. Everybody's making sure that revenue gets in. Concessions, they've already met expectations, that's Splash. And then also the Tiki Bar down at North Beach. Parking is one where we just have not come back. It was aggressive revenue targets set for us, but we worked really hard to get everything we could. We could not make cars park in our spaces. But we are optimistic for this next year. We're working with DPW. It's going to be really key is the enforcement of those lots, but our ordinances have changed to allow them to definitely enforce our lots, and they're ready to support us with that. But otherwise, you can see really strong revenue. Again, if we hit those targets that we hit last year in June, not including May, but just those targets in June, we will hit those revenues. And that is the hard work of our waterfront team to make that happen. And of course, nice weather does not hurt. How we spend our money, I thought that was one of the questions you guys have been wondering about, how do people spend money? Hopefully this slide is helpful to you. It shows that 70% of our budget is spent on personnel, but we also have operating costs, and we have higher operating costs than most departments have. But as you can see, 36% of those operation costs are utilities. As I jumped into telecommunications over the past 2 years to help see, where phone lines maybe we're paying for, and they haven't been used in 2 years. We're also going to dive into those utilities to see, is there something there that maybe we're paying for some utilities that maybe we're not using? I don't really know. I've never actually taken that long deep dive into it. So that's one of my goals for this next year, is understanding that percentage of our budget that we need to really have a great handle on it. The other 25% is that consultant contracts. If your child ever did Lego camp, or they did the flip side, Maven camps, flip side was Rutland, Maven camps or talent camps, those are all contracts. So that contract number is a big one, but that is revenue that comes in also for those contracts. And then a new one for us this year is we are actually contracted out our security at the campground and at the arena. We've always had 2 people at each location. We did contract this year for 1 person at each location through a private security contract, because we just have not been able to get the people the past couple of years. So that'll provide a lot more security down for our spaces. But again, it's something we had provided, but we did with seasonal staff, and we just had a hard time with this topic. Just a few challenges, concerns as we think about this year. We're still struggling to hire lifeguards, continue to work on that. We do have a trainer in-house, which is nice, but just got to find the bodies to do it. Continued deferred maintenance to our parks and buildings. Parking revenue, again, we just really need that support from enforcement to encourage people to park in our lots. And this one's looking out ahead, is that recreation and nutrition program. I'm thinking out to FY25. The budgets have been really tight the past number of years, and we've had to make these incremental cuts. And as we've had grants to infill some of these programs, we had a lot of good grant money through COVID relief for the recreation nutrition program. We're on with one of the grants we've used, it's done. Another grant, we're on the 2nd and final year of it. We did get a new one in this year from the Great Lakes Fishery Grant. We are going to really try to take care of that relationship, to hopefully that is ongoing. But it's one where you look out to 25. It's a program that brings no revenue in. It does not, we don't charge anything for the kids to come to that program. But again, we'll continue to always, as we have been, trying to put grants to fund. And the next slides are really highlights for our various funds that we have. And I know time is of essence, so I'm just going to kind of slip through them really quickly, focusing more on the pictures. This is our Letty Park Comprehensive Plan, as we are in the process of that. It's funded by Penny for Parks. We have a big public meeting coming up next week. And that just is kind of, we got pictures there of our concept design, big moves that we're looking to do there. We have our bond park projects. We have a picture there is funded by the bond, was part of the accessibility for Oakledge, making sure that we had accessible walkways to spaces and accessible parking spaces. Greenbelt, we couldn't picture that picture. There's just a great crew. The best picture part I love about that crew is before they all got their summer haircuts. Can you just see like the hair of BJ's? And then if you could see Derek Eckhart way in the back, he still has like the good wings coming up over his hat. So that was their summer dues. The other one noted there, the Open Space Conservation Legacy program. It's a picture of them at the, what's that called? Help me there, somebody, what's the name of that event? Was the narrative? No, just the reason why it was, oh gosh, I can't say my name right now with that one. It was just down at the Intervale. You had to try to record all your plants for the week. Spectacular Nature Day. That was it. Spectacular Nature Day. It was really fun. I got to eat ice cream made from knotweed, and they had some other tasting things. But that's part of our work. That the legacy program, the conservation team, really was supposed to do the wild waste program. Bike path maintenance and improvement fund. There's our pretty just beautiful greenway. Got a team that takes care of that by the voters many years ago now, to make sure that we were able to maintain our beautiful bike. And central facilities, so many highlights there. Kim and her crew do an amazing job. This was day one of the memorial stabilization projects. They were in on the gym. And then we just have a number of donations and grants from projects that are that we're either working on now or coming up to us. And I have the fun one I have on that Chipletty Park path, which Councilor Jang will appreciate, is I'm not sure what the neighbor's name is, but we have $1 bet on when that gets built. Because he'll ask me when that's gonna get done. I said, well, how about we do $1 bet to this date? It will be coming. So that was fast and furious to hit CEO Shad's timeline she gave me. If anybody has any questions.
Great, thank you, Cindy.
What do you spend the 2% on? But you got 70% employees, 28%, then you got 2%. What's 2%?
You know, Bruce, we don't typically, it's not really time for like lots of interaction with the public here. So if you have follow-up questions, feel free to send notes to the mayor's office. It's really the time the councils have before this budget ends up on their plate. So is there anyone here? I see Councilor Grant has a hand. Go ahead, Councilor Grant.
Thank you. I was wondering, and this may just be a pipe dream, is there any way to quantify how much is spent when our parks employees have to do things outside of their normal job related to, you know, the cleanups that they're doing with regards to areas where there has been drug misuse or, you know, issues of excessive garbage and things like that? Is there a way to quantify that? Do people track the time that they spend doing that that's above what they would normally be doing?
I'll go ahead and answer that one. So one of the things I want to answer first is while it is work that's challenging, it is work that's part of what they do. And so I think that's important to understand is that is work that they do, and that's part of their, you know, job description. It is work that's not anything anybody enjoys doing. It's very challenging emotionally, physically, etc. But getting to your question as far as tracking hours, when things come in and work is assigned through our asset management system, they put that in that helps track the hours. And I know also our park rangers now are keeping track of the different things that they are doing and the time spent. But it is anecdotally, I would say it can be in the summer a significant amount of people's time.
Just a quick follow-up. Does it increase the amount of overtime?
Generally not, because what it might just do is it might just impact other work. So you might be pulling somebody from another project that they would be working on. So maybe you might, I'm just making something up at this point, but let's say that it was the day to mow and we had to do a clean out an area that we were not anticipating to be clean, but they would have scheduled the work to clean out, but you just have to shift those work schedules. So maybe it was you were supposed to mow, they mow something every Thursday, and we determined that we're doing some special clean out that Thursday. It just shifts, you have to shift the schedules.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Governor.
This was really in the same vein, and I like billable hours, but I would encourage the department, best you can guesstimate, to try to track that, just because I think it's part of a much big, broader issue, and just kind of having a sense of the demand for that the unhoused and other people are having on the department. Not, it is our obligation to do it, but just understanding the cost of the city, I think in the future will be important.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll check with Derek, and he could be very well. He's not able to make it tonight. He could be tracking that through ViewWorks. So share that with them.
Councilor Barlow.
Thank you for that. And on your second slide, there was a what if there was more money bullet, and one of the things you wanted to spend more money on was a higher level of care in our parks. Can you elaborate on what sort of things you feel like you are resource constrained on now, and whether or not those are human resources or money for upgrades?
It's a lot, yeah, sure. So a lot of it is human resources. I mean, if you, there is generally not a scrap of paper out of place when it gets to City Hall Park. There's not a cigarette butt that lasts on the ground very long. Everything's trimmed very neatly. There's not garbage within any of the plants. The mowing frequency there, that park is maintained at a very high level, which it should be. It's our main, downtown park. But you think about some of our other parks where, let's use Battery as an example. We can't maintain that level of care there. You're gonna see weeds growing up. You're gonna see different things coming up in those spaces because we just can't, you can mow, we can trim, but we can't get to that same higher level of care in all of those other parks. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And I had another question about graffiti generally, the scourge of graffiti in our city right now. And I was wondering whether or not Parks does their own graffiti removal, or are they depend upon city's graffiti team?
We generally do our own graffiti removal. I mean, I think it's one where, again, if Eric will be able to best answer this, but I don't know if there's times when, maybe we're asking for some support if they're been heavy hit. But generally, we're out there doing it, and it's not that the other teams aren't willing to do it or anything like that. Generally, they're doing their own. But we do try to take care of our own graffiti.
So are you budgeting for more graffiti remediation resources this year? Because it seems like we need a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have any additional, I mean, that would basically, I guess that would probably be the seasonal staff level that because in the winter, the hard part about winter is that so much of that graffiti you can't do because it's too cold, can't paint. But we have not budgeted specifically.
Well, it's definitely something that I think we need. It's like one of the sort of like talk about the loss of our brand as a great small neighborhood city. Part of it is graffiti issue.
Yeah.
And it's in our parks as much as it's everywhere else in our park.
Yeah, and it's a good question because is that one, I mean, there is a special graffiti team that the BNI has, the BI, and so in some ways, is there more efficiencies? If you make that team, I joke like, oh, we could always use more money or more staffing, but if for something like that one, is it better to have a very focused graffiti team? You bolster that program.
It may be worth
It would be, a conversation with.
But it's definitely something we can, for not a lot of money, big impact.
Yeah, I'll connect with Director Board on that. You're welcome.
Go ahead, Councilor Jang, and then I'll come to you, Councilor Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say, this is the most comprehensive presentation about budget that I have heard. So
I tried to listen to every single
I
question.
think you've done it really, really, really well. All the questions that were being raised, and I think you addressed most. Thank you. I also wanted to understand, and also, I mean, another comment is basically, it seems that so far you are the only department is providing 70% of the staff, while the others so far are 80%. And also we know that you have an operation, not only doing administrative stuff, but you take care of this. I don't know how you do it, but you are doing it very well. I could not really understand from my head, the grants that you have on your budget. It seems it would be decreasing in 20. So we had it at nearly 150, it's down to 68. I just don't know what's in.
Yep, I'm happy to explain that one. So that grant there is we received this Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative Coalition Committee. I'm not sure on the C for it. And that was a grant for us to purchase a lot of it's equipment, trailers, skis, bicycles. And so that was to purchase this piece there. And so that was in a grant line for that specific grant. So that reason that one is going down is that we've started buying the trailers, we started buying some of the ski equipment, and then we're estimating at this point what we believe that what will be the remainder that we'll then spend that next year. But that was one grant that we received, that we knew about in light of that, upcoming budget. But with our, incredible grants team that the city has, a lot of capital projects. We've been having success with grants on, a specific one coming up recently was the Callahan. One that was the sidewalks, to connect Locust Street up through to the playground and then to the parking area.
And also as part of your budget, I see that we don't have a substantial amount of donation. It's like fluctuating all over the place. Wherever we touch, sometimes there's nothing, sometimes there are some. And I don't know. Somebody was having.
So we have, a lot of our donations, when they come in for various projects and such, go through the Parks Foundation. And so generally the donations that we're receiving are smaller scale. Dan gets some from, through, people are making donations to the community garden. One of the new programs that we started last year, and I haven't had a chance to check in to see if it's been, how successful it's been yet, is a sliding scale fee for people groups that want to volunteer with us. One of the things I believe is that we bring great value. As we're trying to generate revenue, I'm trying to think of creative ways to generate revenue. Is that if we're doing, let's say 7th generation wants to do a work day at one of our parks. That takes a lot of our staff time. Yes, we're getting something out of it, but we're also providing an amazing staff training for them. I do not say training, but a staff bonding opportunity. So we now have a sliding scale that we'll share with groups that want to volunteer with us to say, here, based on the size of the group, the size of their agency, here's our, we call the suggested donation that they can make to our department to help compensate for the fact of the amount of work that we're putting in getting ready for that project.
Thank you, but I also identified some ways of maybe collaborating with the departments such as the water division and all the departments. But we're not there, just thank you.
Yeah, no, I know, yeah, yes, you have to share, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Bergman.
Thank you. I'm having a hard time locating the total amounts, if there are, of the Parks Foundation grants, and I'm also.
Uh-oh. I think you hit the wrong button. I've done that once before.
Look for him. Excuse me. It's like Councillor Burwich.
Let's try that again, huh?
Yes.
I'm curious about the page where the Parks Foundation grants are located, and I'm wondering with regard to the community gardens, whether there is a line for grants. I know that there was the Vermont Community Garden Network, but I'm not sure whether we're getting any funds from them. So can you help me?
Yep, I can. So the Parks Foundation ones, those are generally for projects. Some of them may be small, some may be large. They go, that would be in our capital budget. You would see donations there. Some may be very small, and some may be large. And so I'm trying to think of this past fiscal year when we were asked the Parks Foundation. Oh, I know they were that might not be this fiscal year, it might have been last fiscal year, where we requested the funds from them that they're holding for the Redstone Cottage. They had 250,000 they were holding for a donation, and that got put into penny for perks, because that's where we were doing our project accounting with. So generally those are project type based ones, and you would see those donations in the capital. Generally penny for perks is where you're most likely to see those donations.
Oh, that is in the city's capital budget as opposed to the Parks Department, is that correct?
Correct, correct.
And then in terms of donations for the community gardens, is that on a line somewhere? I was also, I mean, maybe I just, because there are 42 pages, I was having a hard time getting through and located?
Yep, so two places that generally the community gardens get donations, when people sign up for the gardens and they're looking to support scholarships. Those donations actually go into the admin, because that's where our scholarship line is. So we, that would be the 0000000 towards beginning under contributions. And then in their budget, any donations, if they're doing plant swaps, from any groups that are looking to volunteer. I don't know, Councilor Bergman, if they have, to be honest, if they've received a Vermont Community Garden Network grant. I don't think so recently, because we would have had to get approval for that one. So I don't think I remember seeing it. So I don't believe they've done any Vermont Community Garden Network grants in a bit, as far as I know, but I can certainly ask and get back to you on that.
That would be good. I think there might be some appetite for a more focused fundraising effort on the part of the community gardens, given do you know how many gardeners you've got off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think it's about 600 gardeners. It's an amazing program, and Megan O'Daniel, who runs that program from us, is just phenomenal. I mean, she just meets very specifically with all of our families that have come in from other countries to just make sure that they understand the process. She meets them down at the garden. She goes to the family center to meet with them. She's really hands-on work to help make that happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great. Excellent. I'm not seeing another counselor. Oh, sorry, really good, Counselor McGee, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for you, Catherine. I'm just curious where the conservation legacy funds, where that is.
That's a Cindy question. So that is in our 800 numbers. It's like 834, I think is what the number is there. And that one is in that budget.
Okay. Great.
And if you have any questions on that, just give me a holler. If you need a copy of it, I'm happy to download it and send it to you.
Okay, so is it not in the?
I don't think it's actually in that, because the conservation legacy would have been in last week's, because it fell under the capital. Yeah, but if you didn't get a chance to see it.
And it's part of what Councilor Bergman, I think, was asking about as well, in terms of the Parks Foundation. Everything that we're reviewing tonight is, and as we have been reviewing through all of our marvelous nights, is the general fund budget for each of these departments. And so where there is alternative sources of revenue, like BCA has their foundation, that is budgeted separately. CEDO has their sort of general fund budget and then a whole separate grants budget. So any questions you have, please continue to ask, because it can be a little bit confusing to get the whole picture.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Cindy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. The next up, I believe, is the mayor's office. We're just gonna help with this.
Yeah, you want me to talk about it? No, it belongs here.
You ready to go?
Maybe I'll just start with the first slide, which is our mayor's office personnel costs. We have 4 employees in the mayor's office, including the mayor, and so those salaries and wages are the compensation for those 4 employees. Occasionally, we bring in seasonal temporary staff. For example, if we have summer interns, so that is what goes. Then we have a few operating expense budgets. Our travel and training budget is used for to pay for mileage expenses, for example, when we're driving to Montpelier to the state for VLCT meetings. Our discretionary spending pays for our annual department heads retreat. It in part pays for our annual city employee picnic, and it pays for other incidental costs that come up over the course of the fiscal year.
I would just like to thank the mayor's office. It's small and everyone's always like, it's small, but every little bit counts. Noting that their operating expenses went from about 22,000 in FY23 to about 17,000 for FY24. So every department that can cut their operating expenses, I'm grateful. So thank you, mayor's office.
So with that, I'll just go to questions, I suppose.
Great, so basically no structural things. Are there any questions about this? Go ahead, Councilor Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Aren't they all salary?
We have 3 exempt employees and 1 non-exempt employee.
Okay. If there's no further questions there. Jordan also has typically the mayor's office presents on the regional programs budget. People who haven't been through this before, the regional programs, I would say, is the most eclectic part of the budget in some ways. It is this is not something that and it had been this for a very long time. This is what I'd say. We have made several attempts with the regional programs budget over time. There have been various, for example, we used to give out more arts grants in a kind of somewhat unstructured fashion, and a lot of that was kind of put into some additional funding we created for it, and BCA was given annual community grant funding. We found some other examples of that kind of sort of simplify this budget, but this is, we should have gotten here through many years of decisions and sit as a backdrop. And I don't know if you have any highlights in particular, George.
I will note a few highlights, just very briefly, that I when the final budget comes forward, there will be a few small changes to this budget. I didn't review it as carefully as I should have before bringing it forward, so I'll just note a few of what those changes will be. The Visiting Nurses Association was inadvertently not funded in this budget, I think due to the fact that they have actually changed their name. It's now part of the UVM Medical Center as the UVM Home and Health Hospice group. So that is just an administrative error that will be rectified in the next budget. Similar with the Yaroslav Sister Cities Fund, that was just inadvertently not included. And those are the 2 that I noticed as I was looking at this to come forward.
I would just add, we have adjusted the board and commission compensation down from, we had estimated $150,000 in FY23. You might remember this was one of our equity initiatives, and FY23 is the first year that we have been compensating board and commission members. And so we took that because we did not want to run out of money. Our policy is that board and commission members don't have to accept the stipend and we weren't sure how many would accept or wouldn't. And so $100,000 based on this year's usage should be plenty of money. So just so people know, there's no change to the policy. We're still everyone is eligible just based on actuals. I don't believe that we need to obligate that full year 2,000. Also, we have the expanded mental health, the $400,000 in here. And we have previously discussed that will be moving to a different budget, but since that was put here last year, for now, it's a placeholder here, so you can see that money allocated.
I'll just add one additional thing before turning to questions, which is maybe the way this is administered is we determine through this budgeting process which organizations will be included. You'll note that a lot of these organizations will be receiving the same amount of funding for an extended period of time. And then those organizations send invoices to the city, and that's been a check back for the amount that was budgeted in the authorized budget.
Great, thank you, Jordan. Catherine, the floor is open for questions. Councilor King.
Is the Chamber of Commerce election or the Burlington Chamber election?
And that's our membership fee. So you may be aware that many organizations pay a membership fee. So that is the membership fee that the city pays to the chamber.
Councilor Lee.
Thank you. I know that we received funding request from the Attorney 27 to increase the $4,500 amount. I think earlier this year, I'm not exactly sure when. So I'm just wondering if conversations have happened with them about that. I know they also received grant funding as part of the sort of push that it's the nonprofit grants. So
Yeah, thank you for the reminder, Councilor Lee. Councilor Brown.
I had a question about regional programs, special project, emerging needs. Is that way?
It's flexible funding that sometimes requests will come in for a one-time event or an expenditure from different organizations, and that is used to fund those initiatives. I'll say something that we're using that fund for in FY23 was a lot of the trans inclusive campaign marketing that we have on a partnership with Councilor McGee. So we have it's a flexible fund for initiatives that come up over the course of the year.
Report to the Board of Finance when draws out of it, report to the Board of Finance, and some of the time the Board of Finance members have come forward with proposals for that as well. Go ahead, Councilor Chen.
Just wanted to add, I remember MTR Vermont did make a request, $5,000 they have. MTRs.
MTR.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, also Vermont Connector, Spain, the Congolese Association, all of those made requests, and I believe came from this place.
MTRs is one that is, I think, on the list. The Congolese Association was funded with the RAIB and
So basically, they made new requests, and they asking me, I'm like, this is patriotism. Someone reach out to them and say,
I'm not aware of the new request from the Congolese Association.
I am unfortunate today.
okay. Yes, so my question is specific to the Sister Cities program. And, in years since Lafleur, people came to visit here, and since then, we haven't received, or I haven't heard any relationship with the city and our sister cities. And I was just wondering if those funds were utilized last year.
I'm sure that so sister cities have a community group that relates with a what's the word I'm looking for, but the other respective community group in our sister city country. And I know that the people who are in those sister city groups are always glad to share updates with counselors or the public when asked, and the $2,000 funding allocated in the budget goes to fund that group's activities over the course of the year.
I mean, this raises a question that basically I think we need to revisit the sister city program of the city and how do we strengthen it, give it more vitality, and I think there is opportunity for us to do so. And also if there are updates to what specific committee does it go to in the city. I think a lot need to be thought about the sister city program. But now, these are requests, these are organizations that the city has been funding for years now. What the process of having new requests into this request, into this list, like that are consistent and ongoing? What would be the process to do so? Resolution or?
It's mostly through this annual budgeting process that either organizations or counselors will come forward and discuss if they would like to see it in another organization. And over the course of the year, as Councilor McGee pointed out, we occasionally get requests for increased funding. We evaluate that as part of the annual budget.
Thank you.
Okay. I am not seeing any further hands, so I'm going to close out this part of the meeting. Thank you, Jordan. And we'll go next. REIB department. So welcome again.
Get started. Just want to say thank you for the opportunity. This is my first time sharing for a budget presentation, so hopefully I'm gonna give you a little bit of grace. Taking a look at what we plan, our vision, our proposed vision for FY24, and really with my department moving forward. So some of the slides we had to redo, and we had some more budget information, so we will provide it afterwards. We just want to make sure we have up-to-date information. So part of the realignment of my office and with my hire, we wanted to make sure that we were planning for post-ARPA dollars and sustainability of our office and what that would look like, not just this year, but over the next 5 to 10 years. And part of that was taking a look at the 2000 racial equity as a public health crisis, and then also looking at the RIB's strategic roadmap and figuring out how we can realign our efforts and realign the office moving forward, taking a look at both how we meet the needs of our internal and external stakeholders and populations. So the city of Burlington, the 2020 Declaration of Racism and Public Health Crisis, our office is going to provide strategic guidance, training, technical assistance, support to municipal departments and community stakeholders to address structural racism. The Office of RIB, most important thing is the Office of RIB aims to ensure that race and other demographic factors or identities do not negatively influence outcomes within our city. That's very, very important. With that, we thought we'd take a little stab at really honing in what our mission was. I get a lot of questions regularly about what does your office do? Do you just do training? What specifically do you do? What do you provide to the city? And our ultimate goal is to ensure that all Burlingtonians can fully embrace the everyday joys of life, free from discrimination and marginalization. It seems broad, but the work is broad. It's ever moving and flexible, and so we want to make sure that we're being ever moving and flexible with the work that we do with the city. When we're looking at racism and public health crisis, addressing systemic racism through a public health lens is very comprehensive. And so if you have time to review the 2021 strategic roadmap, we had domains that we looked at, which were economy, education, justice, housing, and health. And as we continued our research, we wanted to make sure that we were looking and leading forward. And so some of the different domains were expanded. One of them was social human development, and that was building upon education, looking at things like early childhood education, retention from our students from K-12 to higher education, how we develop our existing workforce to keep them in the workforce, how we develop our workforce. And so all those things are in social and human development. When we look at community belonging, we want to take it past just justice to look at civic engagement, how people live and thrive in the community. Housing was a big initiative, but we wanted to look at physical environment and what that looks like, not just housing, but sustainability of things about land use and other aspects that really create a city of belonging and civic engagement. That's very, very important. And then health pretty much stayed the same. What we're looking for there is quality of healthcare, cultural competency in our healthcare, and address those systemic inequities and morbidity, mortality, and just chronic disease, and make sure we're addressing those things holistically. What you see here is the program that we're currently doing, the programming that we're hitting on all those domains currently in the work that we're doing. What we have here is our proposed FY24 budget. It's down about $150,000 this year. We're actually rolling over 150 from our budget with my late hire in the year. We just weren't up to capacity to do some of the initiatives that we wanted to do, so we requested to move over some funds. What you'll see in our line items moving forward is we kept some of them the same, but we redefined some of them so that we better understanding how we're spending our money as we work with our community and things of that nature. So what you see here is, as most departments, the majority of our budget is salaries and benefits. We do a lot of data informed things, and so we must have professional consulting services. We're looking this year to expand our cultural events, so that line item doesn't just read Juneteenth. It's really expanding the cultural events to take a look at the needs and representation of all of our BIPOC community. Race and the health crisis, we wanted to denote two different funds. One of them is for programming within the community and things of that nature, and the other one is for planning and data as it relates to coming up with more initiatives, and then the rest is our general operation budget, which could be range from anything from staff training to supplies, office supplies, and any of our different associations and things that we're involved in. We do a lot of fiscal sponsorship. In other words, in the community, we don't run the programs, but we pay to help support the programs, and this is what we've done in FY23. We supported the Richard Kemp Center in their back to school event. In January and February, we took a look at MLK and supported the content there at ECHO. We supported the Black Experience. In April, we partnered with the Fletcher Free Library to bring stories about African Americans, descendants of slavery to the library, and they did it there. We worked in May with Conversations of Ed Holder. It was an awesome event over at the Flint where about 550 students in, and they had a conversation with him about his book and voting rights. That was the first time I ever saw 550 students in a space with no cell phones out. They were very, very engaged. And then in the evening, adults came out and spoke with them and asked questions about voting. And lastly, we're partnering with All Hearts Inspiration to highlight this year's monumental time where they actually have a Black female curator, excuse me. And so Samora J and Myra Flynn, Samora Joy and Myra Flynn are two BIPOC women that will be headlining this event. And so we provided tickets to the BIPOC community to be able to access that free. So FY23, I did want to highlight the direct community investment from our office. We talked about the different funds where we actually give money directly to the community. And what you see is there's so far in FY23, we've already infused $435,000 into BIPOC community businesses and organizations. What you see, the top two, those are really focused on ARPA and FOGA dollars. Okay was to support Juneteenth. New Way Equity was in regards to Black History Month. We supported VNAC in regards to their efforts to address gun violence and things of that nature in the community and get a sense of healing. We're committed to doing more work with them to continue that process. And then Juneteenth, even though it costs quite a bit, we also infuse a significant amount of money back into the community through vendors and other services that we use. We try to highlight and use BIPOC vendors for that. And then what you see is others about another $18,000 to $20,000. That's really looking at organizations that we spend $5,000 or less and putting them all in one category. We are committed to continuing this kind of work in the community as well. So Juneteenth, this is our big one. We want to start off with our promo videos.
Golden, black and free and ebony, mahogany and mocha bee, chocolate Haagen-Dazs can't see. Say beautiful sun-kissed people. Beautiful sun-kissed people. Walking miracles, unfolding parables. This morning will not bring mourning nor a thorn in tears. This forever moment is shorn of fears. Say beautiful sun-kissed people. Beautiful sun-kissed people. Say beautiful sun-kissed people. Beautiful sun-kissed people.
That's one of our shorter promotional videos that you'll see around town. There's a longer one highlighting last year's event and then providing information about this year. As far as budget is concerned, we were allocated $180,000 for Juneteenth this year. Our actual budget is $148,000. There were some deficits left from last year. We have estimated about $100,000 from donations, which brings our budget to $248,000, and we are under budget right now. Working with OK in the community and setting some standards has really been a tremendous help to make sure that we fall under budget or on budget this year. We are kind of reimagining Juneteenth this year. It's all going to be in City Hall, Park area or in central downtown area. Looking at several locations, City Hall Park, Concourse Theater, Burlington City Arts, Lower Church Street, Main Street, and Flynn. There'll be multiple different sites and stages. What you saw at Roosevelt Park in the past, which had a lot of the activities, will now be on Main Street. And so we're bringing basically the community to the cultural center of Burlington. What that does is a couple of different things is it brings people, let them know this place belongs to them, the BIPOC people, as well as the inadvertentness when we're talking about our vendors, people that are just coming here to enjoy Burlington will also get the pleasure of seeing our diversity of our city. So it's 12 hours of entertainment and activities, 50 BIPOC performers ranging from music to, comics. I think Councilor Hightower is one of our comics that signed up, as well as spoken word poetry that will be happening at the Flynn. Unique this year, we're integrating a Juneteenth focused maketv market, which does a huge service to our BIPOC vendors by bringing them new customer base, as well as bringing them to our economic center to really be showcased. And then lastly, we have BIPOC-led health and wellness focused events, which will be BIPOC-led yoga, BIPOC meditation, as well as other health conversation about how to healthy living and things of that nature that will be provided that day as well. So again, 12 hours all in this area, and it's on the 17th this year on that Saturday. It kicks off at 11 a.m. with the BTV market, as well as the gospel choir and brunch. And then the night before, all counselors and leadership staff be invited to a kickoff, and we'll provide community awards and things the night before. Looking forward, we're planning on and working with our neighborhood equity index. What that is a public data portal that quantifies what equity and belonging means in your city and allows you a real-time look at where you need to drive your resources through the lens of Black and brown people are often the most marginalized and disenfranchised. And so we're working with other internal departments as well as outside groups to start to build that up and figure out the data points we need to follow to track that. Expansion of our cultural events I talked about. What we're looking at is to increase our BIPOC-centered representation in the city to make sure we understand and see them. BIPOC home ownership program, really looking at not just poverty, but closing that generational wealth gap. City employee training, I know a lot of people have some questions about that. We are actually working on developing a more comprehensive program with that, not just a training, but from hire to separation, that you get ongoing training. Some of the things you're seeing with that is I worked with the police department and the Center for Police Equity to create the training they did around 14th. Did the learning goals and objectives and help them develop that training. It was 32 hours worth of training that the police department did. Very deep, and we're looking to actually transition that to the whole city. It was very well done. And then I don't know how much you're seeing of our actual newsletter and things of that nature, which is self-directed learning, which is one of the most leading ways to learn as an adult. That we have our monthly equity spotlight that we send out with movie suggestions, books, and all these things that we send out to everyone. I'm not sure if councils get it, but if you don't, make sure you start getting it. And then lastly, our Embrace and Belonging Monument. This is the next step in our city's commitment in regards to social and racial justice issues. We're going to take that permanent Black Lives Matter street painting, that this is the last year that it was scheduled to do that, and transition that into the Embrace and Belonging Monument that will be there forever in Dewey Park. It'll be unveiled sometime FY24 in the fall. And then lastly, a big part of my department moving past the ARPA funding is how do we realign and reorganize our department to the appropriate staffing levels for sustainability. Our current organizational chart has about 14 staff members on it. There are 9 full-time FTEs, 4 limited services, and 1 temporary employee. What we're proposing is a shift to really focus on driving our staff and our subject matter expertise to address racism as a public health emergency and through that public health lens. So looking at this, what you're going to see as the next slide is financially, we're going to lower our staff costs by $150,000 by doing this. That possibly could be realigned or money moved to different places. We're still keeping 9 full-time employees, but we're not being as top heavy. So instead of having 5 supervisors, we'll have 3. We're going from 9 support staff to 6. We're getting rid of limited service positions and temporary positions. I think especially in an office like ours, encouraging upward mobility is important. Staff retention is also important because they're really in there with the community, and having turnover is not a good idea when you're engaging the community that way and building trust. It ensures our employees have the same benefits and opportunities as other city employees. And then most importantly, it promotes recruitment and retention for the city of Burlington for a department that is historically disproportionate BIPOC staff. And what do those positions look like? I can give you a little bit of blurb, but we're going with a data and policy manager. What that would have been before was a health equity manager. We added some more duties to that and kind of broadened their scope as we look what the work's going to look like in the future. Communications and community engagement manager was the innovation manager. And what we did is in that as well. The financial administrator and coordinator is the same as the temporary position, but we added some grant duties there because one of the things for sustainability in my department is we're going to have to find some grant opportunities, not just for our department, but also for community investment. And then lastly, the RIB program consultants, which are going to be integral and I'm most excited about. This is going to be the true partnership and the link between equity and each department, as well as the community. So these people not only will be an expert in the particular domain in which they're kind of lead on, they're going to be able to conduct equity assessments. So the city is not going to have the necessity to constantly bring in experts outside, but we'll have that expertise inside. And then when the experts do come, we'll have data to provide them to really take a really deep look into the city. They'll also be able to help us set equity goals for each department, which is important. And this team will lead the mandatory staff training and develop that and guide that as we move forward and also assess that so that we can make sure we're meeting staff needs. They can also do a little bit of civic education as well. Appreciate your time and ready for questions.
Great, thank you, Kim. Thanks for laying that all out. So the floor is open for questions.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I said, awesome job. I mean, you save money on the reorg, and you brought down the cost of organized to significantly, so thank you for that.
Councilor Grant.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Director Carson for her work and coming in and picking up the pieces and getting out into the community to really, just establish a relationship with stakeholders in the community and to let everyone know that the goals of the department are still intact and moving forward with a vision to keep this department successful, because I believe their work is really important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is about, I haven't seen anything about the Biden's tax support from the mayor's office and also us.
Currently, that would be taken care of within that, where we said regular emergency programming money. So there's money earmarked for that, whatever we need to come up with currently. I believe we're working on scheduling. It's supposed to be the 24th, but we're at the end of the school year, and a lot of the people that we're working with actually partner with kids. So we're trying to do scheduling, but we're looking at next week, Wednesday, being our first meeting.
And you said where exactly?
So it would be under. When we're looking at the budget, you're gonna look at the empowerment fund, money would come out of there. We don't quite know the need, but we did earmark about $30,000 is holding on that. We didn't know what that looked like. And when we talked about the rollover of those two funds, 100,000 and 50,000, that was to make sure that we had funds available for the ongoing programming that we weren't aware of what the cost.
And to Councilor Badlow's question about the staffing, what means it changed from 24 to 18. 24 staff, now 18. I think it's
14 to 9.
14 to 9. Right. And was just wondering if those are like volunteer leaving and what the retention piece is in it. Is it more you let them go or they decided to go? What is it? Can you explain?
Yes, so before I got here, the majority of the staff left with the former director. And then since then, people have had other opportunities. A lot of the staff that I had were in limited service positions. And so currently the staff that I have now, I have one full-time employee, one temporary employee, and then 2 limited services. And so just to be honest, if I was in a limited service position and I'm waiting on a reorg, I'm probably gonna be looking for another job. There's been a lot of transition and turnover in the last year in my department. So I don't think it's anything. People want stability. But with all these positions that are coming up, I will have, I think it's 6 of them that will be open. They'll be a competitive. We welcome anyone back. Anyone's welcome.
So basically those that stay are thinking of staying.
Absolutely.
I feel as part of this budget, and when you put them together, I feel like the city is spending a lot of money in the celebrations. That's very clear. And New Wave, okay, Juneteenth. And from my perspective, those are only aspiring people, like 2 weeks after the celebration is coming. The work of racism is staying here. As part of this budget, I haven't seen anything related to providing more access and how working relationship we need to establish with some that are providing programs and services, parks and rec, ECA, we're talking is about what we're gonna do with the recreation and nutrition program. But I feel that we need to refocus a little bit into like programming that really help into policy change, the way of supporting the departments instead of investing more consideration. And that's just my first observation. This is new. This never came to our committee, and I'm being reactive like everything else. Yeah, those are just my initial things, but we'll dig into it better. And maybe on June 6th, we can talk about this on the committee.
Further discussion. Okay, other questions? Thank you, Kim. Thank you for being here. And next we have Firefine Tia. He's here.
That's the chair. You drive the slides, Catherine?
I will drive the slide.
Right. You're the department. They get the great. That's a good. Great time.
Slightly informal break.
So we're one of those departments that violated the limit on slides. So we'll just through it quickly.
Cindy, you could do it, so you could do it.
Catherine said either you chop it down or you move quickly and skim over some of these slides. But this is such a photo of the brand frame that I felt like we had to share it. So I'm Brian Pine, Director of Community and Economic Development Office. Really glad to be with you tonight. With me is Todd Rawlings, Assistant Director for Grants Finance. And we are, it's always good to lay out CEDO's mission, engage our community to build a vibrant, healthy, and equitable city. We were created almost exactly 40 years ago today. City Council was then called the Board of Aldermen, decided after 2 years of debate to create the department as a way to really kind of focus the city's efforts on the priorities that then Mayor Sanders' community had embraced, which was to really engage in an equity agenda. At the time, it was very focused on sort of social and economic justice and economic equity. And we have expanded that scope to include racial equity within our department as well, and really all forms of equity. So we're a department that does this work with not just an equity lens, but with a real activist kind of equity agenda as a department. And right here, we try to go over the department, sort of how we're divided up, if you will. We try not to be too siloed. We cover everything from the housing grants and finance team that Todd oversees, community trust justice, which is Rachel Jolly's team, which is almost as big as all of us in City Hall. So we're about 17 altogether in City Hall, and CJC has about 15 plus or minus. And Community Works is that little engine that could with Samantha Dunn and just a team of one, which we're hoping to work on this coming fiscal year, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Community engagement, neighborhoods, and workforce development team is Jillian Nanton's team, and Sarah Russell, as you know, in the initiative to end homelessness. We can go to the next slide. I should mention Scott Pavick is part of CEDO, and Scott, as you hopefully know, is the substance use policy analyst. And so we welcomed Scott a year ago, and
continue to support Scott's work. So as you can see, this is the department laid out in an organizational chart. I'll just note that we have 2 vacant positions that are on the sort of left side of the screen that are both housing related positions. We're in the hiring process right now. We're optimistic that we'll have both of those filled in the next few weeks. There's also a vacant position at the top, sort of over to the right, senior projects and policy specialist, which has been on our org chart for years. It was once filled by someone named Kirsten Merriman Shapiro, but it's been pretty much vacant since about the time she left in 19, I think. We're proposing to fill that position actually, so that is a change for the department. Next slide. CJC, a department or a division, team of CETO, which is funded almost entirely with non-city sources, state primarily funded through the Department of Corrections, the Attorney General's office, and the Department for Children and Families. And Rachel had a previous commitment, so she couldn't be with us tonight, but if there's any questions, we get those back to Rachel. So what we try to do is highlight what we've done or what we focused on in 23. And rather than go through them all, because there's too many bullets, we wanted this to be available to you all and to the community to see the work that CETO has been doing on behalf of the people of Burlington. There's a lot here, so we don't have enough time to go through it all. I just wanted to at least highlight, of course, this incredible photo of the Moran property, which was a sort of a challenge, a chronic challenge for decades for Burlington. I think we believe we've really turned the corner on Moran, and the future looks pretty bright for what we're hoping to accomplish as we continue to support the evolution of Moran as a community asset. As you see, memorials listed here. I think I heard a question earlier about stabilization of memorials from former Councilor Busher, maybe. It is work that is taking place in this fiscal year, so you won't see much, if anything, going into next fiscal year. Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront maintains it as part of their sort of public facilities, city facility buildings, but our office has overseen basically the stabilization to keep the roof structurally sound and prevent any parts of the exterior from falling off and creating an incredible hazard, a public safety hazard. So that's where we're at with Moran. We'll go to the next slide. Obviously, our efforts on homelessness, this is a slide. It shows the end result, and there's some workers in progress. There may be a CETO staff member down there in that circle painting the building, and Councilor McGee came out to paint, and maybe some of the rest. The mayor was there as well with his parents painting one day. So the community came together really to turn a former parking lot into a, the name of the street, New Hope Lane, is really not just intended to be kind of aspirational, but it really is about what this is about, is creating not just hope, but a bridge from being homeless to having stability and security and the safety of a shelter here to get you to housing. And it's actually producing results in terms of folks who've left the shelter, have gone to permanent housing through the efforts. Many of them have obtained employment. Really, this has turned out to be, as good as we could have hoped for. It doesn't, not without challenges for sure, but we believe the challenges are being dealt with quickly and effectively, and we're optimistic about transitioning current residents. They're really expected to have a 6 to 9 month stay. We're on target to being able to do that for most folks. So it's going really well. There's a lot of other efforts here around homelessness. We don't want folks to go away thinking that Elmwood is the only thing we're doing. It's really quite a bit more. And we'll have much more to talk to the council about in the coming weeks. Going into the next slide, our efforts around developing new affordable housing. We've supported the Cots Family Shelter. We have 85 units that CHT is developing in City Place. We have another 36 housing units that CHT is developing at the VFW, which will also include space for the VFW and community gathering space there, as well as hopefully the new home, fingers crossed, for the Community Justice Center to be able to move into that building and out of 200th Church, which gives some opportunities that we'll come back to in a few weeks on. We can go on from here. hard to highlight things, but I think it's quick. CJC is continuing to exceed all of their sort of funding benchmarks, if you will, as far as what they're intended to achieve. They will have served over 1,500 people by the end of June. Pretty remarkable level of service. By far the most active and in many ways the CJC that I think the state looks at as a real model, not just providing service to large numbers, but to actually moving the needle on the issues that they deal with around restorative justice and hopefully transformative justice. Our work around workforce development has graduated students through the LNA program. 61% of those have gone on to pass the LNA test, which is actually a pretty rigorous exam. We got the training program that we support through Resource. It is turning out construction workers who have some skills and credentials they can take to the job site and get not just employment, but hopefully employment that is more career track type positions. The next one. Our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion this last year has focused on the efforts around community engagement for the All Legal Resident Voting Initiative. We continue to provide support to trusted community voices, reaching 2,100 persons per month via social media. We have a multilingual newsletter that goes out on a periodic basis. Provide direct support to the language access implementation. So working with other departments and community organizations that are looking to translate materials to make sure that everyone has access to the information to be fully engaged in the community. CJC completed an equity audit, which I'm glad that Director Carson mentioned that REIB would be able to help with that, because it was, we feel that there's some benefits to having it be something the city does sort of for departments, and it may be a way that departments can, really align their programs and their efforts. But it may also be a way to help fund, we paid for this and we would pay for it again if it was a good service. So if REIB was providing that service, it could be that type of practical relationship. We continue to provide the support to the NPAs, and that work has been almost, I think, since CETA started 40 years ago. So that work continues. Through our relationship with business and workforce development, our CDBG funds flow through the department. We provide direct technical assistance to small businesses, micro entrepreneurs, local businesses hoping to reopen and expand. We are working to help to support Rhino, and a lot of this we do as two departments working really closely together. Development of hopefully the spa that will arrive on Pine Street in the future. We can go to the next. Our CDBG funded work is, it's a flagship program of the department. It really is one of the reasons why the city created CETA, was to ensure that we were taking an approach to investing these funds, which have gone down significantly since CETA started, actually. So I'll show you that in a little while. But we still receive around 700, a little over 700,000 a year that goes back out to the community through a CDBG advisory board, which maybe some of you have served on in the past. It's a very direct democracy approach. Most cities just get a check from the federal government, if you will, and the mayor decides where it goes, and that's it. And that's how CDBG is allocated across the country. But Burlington's always done it in a very different way. The impacts, I think, are huge. The requests, unfortunately, usually exceed our dollars available by 5 to 1, pretty much. Next slide. Looking forward to 2024, what we hope to focus on is ensuring that Champlain Inn continues. That's a critical resource and has been challenged with a number of recent developments. We need to secure funding to continue the Elmwood, both the Elmwood Shelter and the Community Resource Center. We're optimistic about both of those. We have funding applications pending, or at least for the Elmwood Shelter. Going to continue to engage with council around camping policy, and those difficult issues that you're grappling with. We continue to deploy and will deploy CDBG funds as outlined here. our real focus around homelessness is to ensure that we increase the number of homeless dedicated units, both in nonprofit housing, but also in for-profit housing if we can. It's a real challenge, but we're committed to that. As you all know, the gateway block / memorial redevelopment concept is something we'll be working closely with the council on. Moving into the conceptual design phase for Moran phase 2. We're funding these projects both at basically Valley Park District, the barn and Allen House renovation. That really is a benefit to the community. It draws people to Burlington. It gives, I think, folks a sense of some of that piece of our history. We'll move to the next slide. Going forward in 2024, we're going to continue to support trusted community voices, to ensure that our role is to coordinate their work. They do the actual work, and there are 7 members of the TCVs, and they all are part-time city employees, so they get paid a wage to provide that service to their communities. And we think it's a really important innovation that Burlington has led the way on. We continue to work on the language access plan. We'll continue to deepen those relationships with both city departments and community organizations to overcome barriers to accessing their services, their programs due to language barriers. We are at the early stages with the personal care assistant training program, working with hopefully up to 25 people over a 9-month period, getting the skills for moving into the PCA positions, of which there's such a huge demand in our assisted living and nursing facilities. Continue to fund the CDBG funded business technical assistance through business and workforce development, the trades, construction trades, safety and training program at Resource, and advancing workforce equity in Burlington is another phrase for what we've called the jobs and people study, which is looking for both where the economy is sort of headed in terms of where the jobs in the future will be, and how do we ensure that Burlingtonians can access those jobs? What are the training supports that we need to put in place so that Burlington residents can move into those positions? So next slide. Affordable housing, I think we've mentioned a number of these initiatives. You all certainly can peruse this. Later point, I would highlight at the bottom, the Housing Trust Fund resources have grown significantly from what they used to be, both with the increase in the dedicated fund, the tax amount, but also with short-term rental. The ordinance that you all passed has directed significant new resources. So we're going to be kind of regrouping as various departments, several departments with the mayor to talk about, how to leverage those resources to really advance some of these other efforts around homelessness, also around BIPOC ownership, which Director Carson mentioned earlier. Next is sort of just some highlights of CDBG funded projects, and I'll let you guys peruse these later. I think we'll go into the budget overview. This is the big one here. We are an unusual department, and if you look at the chart on the pie chart on the left, most of our dollars actually go back out the door as opposed to funding salaries and benefits, and that's in the form of grants and loans and other programs. So it really is, we serve as a conduit and an intermediary for funding to make sure that it flows to the community to accomplish the goals and objectives that the city has set. We do that in a way to ensure that we can continue to manage and administer these funds effectively. So that there's a lot of work, a lot of detail, a lot of effort involved in that. On the other side, you see our revenues are very diverse. We have a very diverse revenue base. Each source has its own set of requirements. The general fund number of right around $1 million is slightly less than last year by about $70,000 less. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We can go to the next slide. I would note that something we want to call your attention to is that the mayor and the city council established the RRC, the Resource and Recovery Center, in 2020 with primarily with ARPA, and that was really a immediate response to crisis. The pandemic and trying to ensure that folks had access to critical support that they needed to navigate the pandemic. And that response, we think made a huge impact. It really did help people who were struggling with housing, health issues, employment, with maintaining their small businesses. And that was in many ways the response that the times called for. As we moved away from that recovery mode, we're shifting into more of a focus on both economic recovery and some of the development priorities of this community that have been stalled or were at least put on the back burner. So we've really shifted our emphasis begun to shift to more staff resources devoted to these projects, these priorities, Moran, City Place, the Gateway Block, redevelopment of underutilized sites down on the south end for high density housing and other projects to realize this goal of housing as a human right and ensure a more equitable economic recovery. So that's an important piece, I think, to share. And go to the next slide to talk a little bit more what that looks like. So we really have a few positions I highlighted on the org chart that have been left vacant for years. And those are positions which advance these community development projects, but the funding hasn't been available to support those positions. So we're proposing to fill that vacant project and policy development position that will really support that community works team of one, Samantha Dunn's team, to get some of these projects, really advance them and try to bring them to fruition. So that's the goal of that investment. We're also proposing to essentially not fill an existing vacant position and to no longer fund the position of community outreach coordinator, which was a position that was in direct response to the pandemic and was an RRC position. But that we are recommending going forward that position not be funded next fiscal year. Next slide. The key thing that we want to highlight here is that we, as a department, we've lived in many ways. We sort of lived and died by the grants. So with a shortfall with a reduction of ARPA funds that we use to fund some of those positions, we thought it was most prudent to look at what positions could be trimmed from the department and resources reallocated to better achieve some of the strategic objectives the city has. And so that's what you're seeing here now. ARPA funds are out of CEDO's budget are diminished significantly. Home ARP is a source, but we're going to have spent all those funds, at least we think, in the coming fiscal year. And UDAG, which you've all heard about occasionally, is an old funding source that is a legacy program that we have available, but those dollars are being spent rapidly. So we're spending down those funds. And really, we want to highlight that the federal funds we've relied on, home and CDBG, have decreased to the point where now they're at between 33% and 40% of what they were in 1993 at funding levels if you account for inflation. So really seeing a huge slippage in terms of federal support for the work at CEDO. We wanted to highlight these items here under sort of the consequences of where we're at. Without future action from the council at the end of fiscal year 24, TCVs doesn't have a dedicated funding source. That is a time limited funding source. The shelter operations in Elmwood in FY25 comes to an end in terms of funding commitments. Community resource operations, we have funding through 24. Hopefully we can acquire additional funding. Language access has, again, funding that is highly dependent on ARPA funds that we've been using as well. Staffing to end the initiative to end homelessness, to support the initiative to end homelessness ends in 25. And staffing for community works at this rate of spending is going to be fully depleted by the end of 25. So what's the solution? We'll come to that solution in just a minute. We wanted to highlight a portion of the total CEDO budget on the left in the pie chart, just under $1 million out of an $11,432,000 budget. So sort of why did CEDO get general fund as a department? Because there was a time when it got very, very little, and really since the mayor's first term in office, CEDO's general fund support has grown significantly from a couple $100,000 to where we are today. These are the reasons why. We really we have the department, which is often the department that gets to respond to pressing and emerging challenges without dedicated funding. And so that's why the flexibility of general fund support is so critical. Our backbone funding from HUD has decreased steadily over the years to the point now where we're at 33% of what we were getting previously 30 years ago. The needs continue to grow, and so our ability to respond is dependent on having some level of support. We've seen continued inflationary pressures. Last year's COLA was significant pressure on us. It was obviously justified by the cost of living for everyone experienced. And the initiatives that are listed here are just some examples of ways that our staff is spending time on things that we don't have like an actual grant source to go to. So really important to point that out. Going forward into FY24, we're engaging with a technical assistance program that HUD offers. A little funny to call yourself a distressed community, but HUD considers us a distressed community. So we went to them and said, help us find a way to fund CEDO as a department sustainably going forward. Look at other cities, look at other comparable size cities, and come up with some models for how to fund the work that CEDO does, so we're not in this position where we're struggling to keep our office staffed and we can't respond to pressing needs. So these are just, this bullet here, ideas to maybe capture some future tax revenue of projects that we, but for CEDO's involvement, wouldn't have come to fruition. Obviously, aggressively searching for new non-general fund sources is our charge, and that we take that charge really seriously. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Brian. Floor is open for questions. Okay, yeah, this isn't really, this isn't really a time for public questions. Councilor Barlow.
Thanks. There's a lot in there. I had a couple of questions. One's more general, one which is around the in the funding challenges slide, the consequences. There were certain programs ending in fiscal 24, others ending in fiscal 25. It'd be nice to know what what ones you have like a level of confidence you can find alternative funding sources from other than the general fund for, and what those impacts might be if you quantify those at some point. I think it'd be good to know as we start to plan for that.
I think that's something we could probably put some time into between now and the next couple of weeks, maybe. I don't think I can give you a whole lot off the top of my head right now. I mean, we're pursuing funding right now for the Elmwood Shelter and the Community Resource Center. We don't have a specific, I think that slide about getting technical assistance from HUD to figure this out is a big part of what we're hopeful we'll come back to you with a report that says, here are the ways we can look going forward. Here's the roadmap. It's not entirely a clear map, but hopefully it'll be more clear than there is now.
Thanks. And I don't know that it's not necessary for these budget discussions, but it's certainly like, something we need to be to way ahead of next budget.
We appreciate that. And I don't want to imply that these programs are on the chopping block. These are programs we think are incredibly critical, really. They're critical responses. The city has stepped up to provide these services. I think the community is much stronger and much better, and it's part of what our role is as a municipality. So we're focused like a laser beam on this stuff. We're really going to find a way to do this, but I don't want to give you false expectations that we've got to figure it out as we go.
Thank you. And then my other question is more narrow and specific, and it's around like the Champlain Inn, and how, we can't find a provider to manage for the city. Do we have a contingency plan, and is that accounted for in the current budget?
It's not accounted for in our budget. I would say that the state of Vermont is very committed. It's luckily Sarah's here to help me with this one, but is very committed to continuing the operation of that shelter in one way or another. And there are some capital improvement needs that we actually funded and they weren't able to bring that project to fruition with CDBG funds. So those dollars will be coming back to the city, and we have those dollars available, and there will be other work, we think, from the state of Vermont on Housing Conservation Board to upgrade the facility. And we don't have any news to share about an operator, but I think there's some prospects. It's not entirely, we haven't hit a dead end yet on that. Sarah, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that we continue to work in really close coordination with the state on ensuring continuity of operations of the Champlain Inn. And we have been meeting as frequently as every week or every other week for the last month or so with stakeholders. And we're meeting again tomorrow. As Brian mentioned, some of the biggest concerns around assuming ownership of or assuming operations of the property involve the question of ownership of the or operations of the program. The concerns are around assuming ownership of the property and the state of the building there as well. So there are a number of conversations going on, including with VHCB, as Brian mentioned. They do have all of the funding or have committed, the funding to support all the necessary rehab that needs to happen at the property.
I'll just add that I'm very focused on let's find a way to continue. We fought very hard to get this facility open. I think we're in a period where I'm doing expanded emergency shelter for an extended period of time until housing production efforts start to make a dent in the huge backlog we have. So it's not just a state interest for it's high priority for the cities that's remain open. I am pleased that through Brian and Sarah's work, we have a commitment in place to operate through September. I think it's some time to figure out a transition to another operator. With respect to, just want to quickly go back and not to give you a comprehensive answer, but I think with this budget season and the kind of ending of this period of unprecedented federal funding, it's clear that FY24, FY25, FY26 budgets, as we mentioned at the kind of the overview, we have some real challenges. We're gonna, I think, work on starting to understand the FY25 budget is going to be a process of work finance is working on throughout the year. We have a variety of studies that are going on that, as we talked about in the past, I think we completed a report the early part of FY24. Clearly, we have a lot to be focused on, including the initiatives that Brian listed out here, but there are some others as well. We have some FY25 budget. It's going to be something we have a lot of conversation and real challenges.
But as a department that's charged partly with growing the tax base, that's obviously part of the answer too, right?
Councilor Jang had his hand up a while ago. Go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, is it really healthy in the department that almost everything is in it? From language to upgrade to housing development, to you name it. Like it's not healthy. Let's tell me.
At least we're not plowing the streets.
Okay.
We're not carrying guns either to.
It's okay. It's okay. But I feel like, department is doing so much great. But most of it does really well. And one question is specific to the trustee community voices. Also to the implementation of the language access policy, right? I mean, from just first glance, this definitely belongs to REIB. And you can see it with the restructuring. It's perfectly the community engagement. That's a bracket identified data and policy. That includes two. One, you won't have a problem with 24 after 24 because this is a new department, and I feel like those definitely have that problem solved. This is an observation without digging into the details. But I was also surprised, really surprised that the trusted community services, they serve 1,200 people. This is amazing. This needs to be strengthened and solidified and supported, because this community is changing. We identified this need, the pandemic, done it, and I do believe that, housing maybe created done it. It's great. I also identified that, your focus for the coming years are more about developments. The modern plant is one, city place is one, but I did not see anything specific to economic development of the people, right? But I know if you develop, yes, taxes will come, jobs will be created, I understand that. But how to strengthen the training programs that you have in the work, is a resource with LNA, I think those need to be looked at and prioritized as well. The workforce development. But this is my first observation and was amazed about that.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. It is getting late, so I'm gonna move on. Thank you, Brian and Todd. Next up is Chief Chance and then the fire department. Wow.
Great, Chief. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. So this is, I apologize, my slideshows are being short, so. So, FY24 fire department budget, we're a pretty simple organization. You call, we come, and we take care. We do our best to take care of the problems you have. So, pretty simple organization. We're authorized for 96 personnel. We have staffing, as you can see here, for 3 engines, 2 ladders, a tower truck, 3 ambulances, and a battalion chief shift commander. We operate from the same 5 stations we have for years and years. One of them being the oldest active firehouse in the city, in the state, which is pretty cool. Admin division is with 4 personnel, training division has 1 person, prevention has 3. They take care, they're the fire marshal's office, they take care of all of our inspections, time of sale inspections, as well as our investigations of incidents, and the EMS division is staffed with 1. Calendar year incidents, 9,900 calls in calendar year 22, 19.5% increase from 21. 31 structural fires, a 29% increase from 21, and 6,200 medical calls, a 7.5% increase from 21. First, we did some numbers, first 4 months of the year over year from 2016 to 2022, and we're up 50% EMS calls since 2016 in the first 4 months. So significant increases. We all talk about it. We all know why, but it's there, and we're doing our thing. So next slide, please. Pretty simple organizational chart. I know it's funny, when I was the deputy chief of administration, I never liked this slide because I said, well, it doesn't really seem like I do a whole lot. Under that is, HR and 84 firefighters. So, that's that deputy chief of administration does that work. Battalion chief of training, it's like, what does that person do? And that person is in charge of all the training for the fire training for all of these folks you see here. There's EMS training certifications that need to be kept up. There's fire certifications that need to be kept up. Ropes rescue training, hazmat training. All of that is managed by the battalion chief of EMS, or battalion chief of training. Battalion chief of EMS is a position that we've struggled to fill. We're excited to hopefully fill it soon. But with 3 ambulances and over 6,000 EMS calls, as you can and advanced EMTs and paramedic service. There's a lot of training to be done with that. There's a lot of organization with the hospital. There's also QA, QI of EMS calls. We do quality assurances on all paramedic levels calls. And that's all stuff that's going to be under the BC of EMS, as well as just working more closely with our partners at Vermont EMS to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. Fire department allocation salaries is huge, of course, and benefits. That's where our dollars are. We do have minimum staffing requirements for the trucks. We can't run, and we won't run below 22 a day. So you'll have 22 firefighters on duty minimum per day. And that just makes it so that we can meet requirements for, or come close at least to meeting requirements for fire and EMS responses. But you can see utilities, services, and operations are a pretty small piece of our budget. So when those pieces are level funded, as we did our best to do this year, it does get expensive. It does get tough to cover things. Bunker gear, for example, set up one firefighter with just bunker gear, helmet, gloves, boots, coat and jacket is $4,265 per person. We have 84 people that have 2 sets each. We're trying to reduce our cancer risk. We have extractors in the stations. When we go to structure fires, we do our best to get them to, or we do our best so we require them to wash their bunker gear. When I started in the fire department, it was fill up a 55-gallon drum of water and it was dry in the sun, and that was it. Now we have 3 extractors in the fire stations. We've gone a long way to really protecting our firefighters from cancer risk, which is a huge risk for our responders. 2 sets of gear for each responder is a huge expense, but it's something that's really protecting our folks. The goal being, we want them to meet their requirements. We want them to, meet the sense of duty that you guys expect, but we don't want it to cost them everything in the end. And that's truly our goal, and we're doing our best to meet that goal. But again, it's hard to do level funded budgets. We need to just to stay at level that we are because of NFPA requirements and everything. Bunker gear lasts 10 years from date of manufacturer. We need almost $78,000 a year just to replace coats and pants and boots, say nothing about everything else. So it's very difficult. Okay, this is revenues and expenses. We are very heavy burden on the general fund. We do have revenues. Our revenues consist of fire marshal dollars for inspections, time of sale inspections, permitting, things like that, and EMS. We do charge bill for EMS, and that is the bulk of our revenues. As you can see, our expenses here are mostly staffing and benefits. Accomplishments for FY23. We did start having to recruit a little more aggressively. Typically, and historically, we're having a hard time filling fire department jobs. Honestly, the last week I've been doing my best to fill 7 positions. We interviewed. It's been a struggle in the last week, but I think we're there. We successfully completed and started 1 recruit class. Completed 1 in FY23 with 14 employees. We also took over the fire desk dispatch, which was a new thing for us since 1992. I think it was taken away from the fire department. Police department just having some struggle filling the positions, so we took over the fire dispatch and we hired, trained, and have been managing that since December. 3 of our 4 dispatchers are going to start recruit school on the 30th. We hired 4 more and we started them today, actually. So training on those 4 dispatchers began today. So we did implement 4896 shift rotation this year. I know that might not sound like an accomplishment being at work for 2 full days, but we've been on a 24/48 for years and years. And through COVID, we did have some struggles with folks, just the stresses of being at work. It always felt like you were either just getting off duty and recovering or getting ready to go back to work, which is pretty much the case. So, and then we had very high overtime burdens during COVID. We had a lot of COVID leave just because there's a lot of exposure in the fire department. So we decided to try to implement a 48-96 shift rotation. It actually reduces the drive to work by half. And it gives folks that 4 days, it's 2 days on, 4 days off. It gives folks that 4 days off to really actually feel like they're normal humans again before going back to work. It's just really, you know, once you're there, it's hard to imagine sometimes to be someplace for 48 hours, but waking up the bells. But once you're there, you're kind of there. You're in the mindset, and it just reduces that change of mindset in half, really. And we negotiated and signed a 4-year contract with the Burlington Firefighter Association. It was an excellent accomplishment this year. The budget will sustain an increase of 3 FTEs as negotiated in the BFFA contract. This was negotiated to reduce our overtime burden and help us to retain full staffing as much as possible. We also worked with CEO Shad and the department to see a 20% increase in the EMS supply budget to support increased costs in EMS supplies. EMS supplies are just like bunker gear. They're very expensive. We hadn't seen an increase in our EMS supply budget since we put our 3rd ambulance in service. We've seen a lot of increase in responses, and a lot of that increase we own now. We're not relying on our mutual aid partners, so there's cost to that. On the flip side, we are seeing that revenue as well, so we should be able to cover these costs pretty easily with increased revenue. And then all other operating budget expenses, it's pretty well status quo. You know, we're unfortunately it's tight fiscal times, and as much as we'd like to expand things like our training to more things, we're just unable to, and hopefully we'll be able to do some more that kind of thing in the future. Looking toward FY24, we do have some new fire trucks coming, which is always exciting. We love new trucks. This was bought with bond money, so we appreciate the citizens of Burlington for supporting those bonds. Ladder 4 is scheduled for January of 24. Engine 1 and Engine 3 are scheduled for June of 24, which seems like a long time away, but it is taking a long time to get trucks. We are getting a new ambulance, supposed to be this year. Ambulance deliveries are at about 3 years to get an ambulance, and fire trucks are about the same. It's just you know, the increased costs and just hard to get things in the supply chain. Just like it's hard to get things for you folks, regular things. Say nothing about you know, fire trucks and parts. So I'm sure that you guys have heard from DPW and their struggles, but just keeping trucks in service based on parts has been a difficult thing. Station 2 and Station 3 upgrades, we're pretty excited about this to support a diversifying workforce. Those 2 stations have bunk rooms, which is not ideal for folks that are uncomfortable sleeping in the same room as everybody else. So we're working, we have a plan for Station 2's bunk room. Currently, we're working on a plan, and it's pretty great. It's going to be 5 bedrooms instead of a bunk room, and Station 3 is to come. The new radio system is being installed or being planned, and we have funding set aside for it. Thanks again, citizens of Burlington, on supporting that bond. They could be able to support our new radio system, and honestly, it's just going to be much more reliable and far further reaching for our responders, so that we know we can hear them when they're. We're going to have hopefully some fresh staffing and key leadership roles, the Deputy Chief of Administration and the EMS Chief, working to get those positions filled. And recruitment and retention of firefighters is something that we're always looking to do. Retention has been a little difficult over the last couple of years. COVID certainly did not help. We're really going to be focusing on employee wellness, both mental and physical, and just trying to reduce the high levels of overtime that are causing on folks and their families. So just making this the fire department is just a place they want to be, and they want to work, and they're excited to come work. So that's it.
Thank you, Chief. Great. Floor is open. That's Jen.
Very quick, I think that this time you were appointed
talked about the 70 to 20 years starting, continue, you say that. Thank you. And also you continually been thanking for us, the ambulances for all of that balance. I think that's what I think. And there was like $400,000 gap in the budget. I think last year or the year before.
Yeah, FY22.
22.
I believe, and if I were to make a fairly uneducated guess without the budget sitting in front of me, I would say that we did have a very serious amount of overtime with the COVID-19 pandemic. It really hit the fire department hard. Again, with minimum staffing, we can't fall below that by union contract, so we have to fill to it. And honestly, I have a spreadsheet with every single person that had COVID leave as I managed it when they were gone. You have your vacation time, your leave time, and then you have that COVID time on top of that, and that's just time that we had to cover and very expensive.
And it's really inspiring to hear you say all of it and it's what you say for hiring.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Chang. Anyone else? All right, looks like we're getting tired here, Chief, so.
All right. Thanks very much. Two more presentations. We have John Wickery and the city secretary. Good night, everybody.
Thanks. Hi, John Vickery, Burlington Assessor. Excellent. We're a small department. We have 4 people in our department. Go to the next slide. What do? Our main goal is to try to be as fair and have equitable values as much as possible. We just came out of a reappraisal showing good numbers in the up market. But part of being equitable is having public access to all of our property values and having the public be able to review their property as well as other properties. We've had that for a long time. We also have personal property that is in its next year's last year for business personal property tax. And right now we are in the week of holding our property valuation appeal hearings. It's very light this year, which is wonderful, and hopefully in the future it'll be light as well. I have a great staff right now that I think does a great job ahead of time. So our goal is to be equitable. Here's whoop, right there. This is our staff. Myself, city assessor, deputy assessor, works on a lot of commercial and residential stuff. We have an associate assessor and an assistant residential appraiser. They're both union. And they're both qualified appraisers. The trend from the prior year to the current year is now that we are staffed up with full-time appraisers. We were able to remove a temporary limited position that we had that was somewhat seasonal. So that's gone. That saves a little bit of money. We are asking for a little bit of money for integration with this new state-supported software called Axiomatic. The name that the state uses is VTPI. We need that to collaborate with Patriot Properties, what we call it, AP5 software system. And most of that connection has been made, but we want to reserve some money so in case we need to redo some of our forms, and we want to make sure we can have that full integration for the following year. We are going to retire the NIMRIC software, so this new software needs to be integrated. This is our small little department. What our revenues are is about $103,000 comes from the state of Vermont. That in most cases should be put aside for the next reappraisal, and the administration is doing a good job of that. Other small costs is just basically for full-time staff and their COLA adjustments. And then we are actually not needing consulting money set aside in the event that we have to go to court for certain cases or hire professionals to come in. So we were able to save some money there. Our goals, well, we will always want to increase the amount of reviews that we do. I think that makes more accurate individual property valuations, as well as overall, I think that when we're doing that year after year after year, it creates a better, more fair database. People have more confidence in what you're doing and what their information on their record card is. And then, of course, the other goal is just to fully integrate our software systems together. We want to boost our review of all the properties that sell. Because those are the properties that we measure the market with. If I were to add one more thing that didn't make the list here is just the language access. I've been putting a lot of thought to that lately, and I understand CEDO has some money, and we want to update our website with multiple languages. And also we want to update it, I think, for equitable purposes. Statistically, new Americans don't appeal their property values, and I think that if we can just lighten up some of those barriers, I think that would help a big way. Is that it?
Appreciate you.
Another slide, but maybe not. So there's, thank you. I'm here to ask, take any questions and answer.
Great, thank you, John, and appreciate the last goal, and that's something else we'll be talking about in the year ahead as well. As one of the studies coming back is this sort of analysis of the equity property tax system, and John's giving a kind of preview of some of the findings that are coming in.
Yeah, that's very good information.
Councilor Carter.
Two questions. We had the report back from the appraisal appeal committee with lots of recommendations. This is maybe more for you, but how are we going to take that forward? I mean, there's a lot in it, and I think I said that at our meeting. Now we've got it. I don't want to put it on the shelf, so I think either you should come to us with a proposal, or we, the council, should think of a process, because well, we know it very soon. There's going to be another reappraisal, and I think we have some good recommendations. So I just want us to go forward with that.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. I think it's a fair and important point. We're in this, there's a lot going on right now in this space. So the state, where the kind of, do we even know where, I guess, where did the legislation end?
Yeah, so the bill was H 480, and the state was examining this. There's many towns that are required to do a revaluation, and it's an overload, and there's not enough resources out throughout the whole state to do that. So this came about because of that, and they're trying to set up a plan, more of a statewide, possibly way of tackling citywide revaluation on all that work. So the work that the ad hoc reappraisal committee put together, they mentioned it, but the bill is still active. I think it still needs a governor's signature, and that may change how everything is done. I think one of the recommendations in the bill is that there's a reappraisal every 6 years, and not putting so much pressure on statistical measures in that bill. Going back to the committee's work, I think there are items that they recommended that don't cost a lot. It's just a matter of putting some time into it. And I think that's more about informational things that we can provide and do a better job of notifying the public of the processes, and that we want to work on that stuff this year. That doesn't cost any money. There are other things where staffing would be more expensive.
Actually, just on that informational thing, I don't think we do this, but do we list the completed sales prices anywhere in the city? I mean, because of the property transfer tax, Treasurer's office knows every sale that happened in the city. And I would ask as a city service if we could think about that is probably between your two offices, somehow just listing those, because it's, as I understand, it's not difficult information to get. We got it all the time at VHFA, you can download it. So I'm just suggesting we think of a way to list that information for people's own curiosity.
So, to, the other thing, so take that under, I hear what you're saying, and I mean, there certainly are lots of ways the city database where the information is available, but I'm not sure we do it exactly the form that you're saying, so we'll follow up on that. And another thing happening in this space is this property tax, this urban 3 study that is to be completed soon. So I think it would make sense for, so sort of these 3 big things: the committee report, the state legislative action, this urban 3 report coming. I think in the months ahead, we should sort of pull that all together, and there'll be some set of recommendations or other kind of memorialization of decisions to come back to it. It's gonna take a little bit longer. Councilor Barlow.
There were some other things that were in the report, though, just to pick up on Councilor Carpenter's point around educational material, like 1-pagers on how to read a property record card, or what the process is for appeal. And there was some recommendation about videos and things, and I'm wondering if we couldn't budget for those things this year and just have, if assessor office resources weren't available, to get, contractors or something to help us with that. So I do think that information is important. So I'm not sure if we have to wait for the other things to sort of sugar off, the state processes and things, to get those kinds of educational materials sort of prepped and done. If we have the in-house resources and they're not working on other things, that's great, but if not, it would be an opportunity to maybe get some of that stuff.
I think there's some capacity for us internally to do a little work on this. And there is a lot of resources out there, and that's what the committee said. There's a lot of resources out there. It's a matter of putting it together so that people know where to go. And then also enhancing a dashboard on what's going on with the market. And I'm not the only department that has put some information out there that we can do. I don't think any of this stuff is overwhelming, but outside of the bigger items.
That's good to hear.
Councilor Bergman.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Councilors Carpenter and Barlow said, and would like this to be part of the work plan for this year. I can see taking a few months, maybe in the fall, October, September, to deal with the state legislation. And I think that's around the times that the study is going to be back. But this other work, I think we need to commit the resources to correct the problems that we had in the reappraisal. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, John. And that brings us now to our final presentation of the night and of the whole journey. This is Solar Forest Development. Carmen, welcome, Cara.
Last but not least. Yeah, I'm giving a shout out to my 2 assistant directors who stuck it out tonight. This is Samantha McGinnis and Will Clavel. And I'll try and make it brief. Okay. Okay, business and workforce development. So for those of you who don't know, we divide the department into 3 sections. The Church Street Marketplace, which has its own budget separate from the general fund. We're an enterprise fund there. That includes full maintenance of the street, all the marketing and promotion, over 30 events annually, either ones that we produce ourselves or that we host for community members. We have incubator business programs, which are our cart vendor program and community arts and culture. Then we move to business support citywide. You may have seen the brand Love Burlington. That's the brand under which we support our small businesses throughout the city. I hope you all follow it on social media. We do micro business development. We recently launched a revolving loan fund, which I'll get into later. We do a lot of direct training and technical support for these businesses, business recruitment and retention. And as Director Carson mentioned, these annual markets that we have in conjunction with BCA are part of our business incubator program. And then we have the workforce development side, under which we have the early learning initiative, which we view as a workforce development program. 83% of the families we support in the early learning initiative say they wouldn't be able to work without our support. We are starting our second pilot workforce training program with Let's Grow Kids to address some of the worker shortages in the childcare industry. And we're coordinating with new and expanding businesses to find out what their needs are in our workforce. Highlights of the past year. I'll run through these quickly. The early learning initiative. What we're really proud of here is we've sort of expanded our marketing and our translation, so we're reaching more members of the community. We have more fully translated, we have the website fully translated as well as our digital forms. And we're also now providing what we call language access grants to our partner childcare programs, so that they can have some of their own materials translated so they can properly communicate with families who are not native English speakers. We are still managing what's left of the 27 million ARPA dollars in conjunction with Catherine's office, of course. Sorry, CEO shot. And in terms of business development, as I mentioned, we have 2 small revolving loan funds that together equal $500,000. We are utilizing Kiva, which is a platform for the smallest loans, which is a form of crowdfunding as well as using our dollars. And then the larger piece, for the larger loans we manage in-house, we have an underwriting committee, which are members of our community, members of RAIB, and members of our banking community. We have assisted 40 businesses with technical support. And as you can see, the vast majority of those are women and BIPOC owned. Again, we did the How They Built It speaker series, which we held at Local Maverick, where we had local business owners speak to people who are interested in starting businesses, some of the challenges that they faced, and the rewards that they had. As you know, we have the summer, winter, and One World Market. And then on the Church Street Marketplace side, we launched a brand new website. We revamped a lot of our programs. We hosted over 30 events, and the holiday season was back to pre-pandemic levels for the vast majority of the businesses on the street, which was really a goal of ours. What to expect from the department in the coming fiscal year. More free community events. We have some new donations that we are expecting from some local businesses and families that will help us expand our free events on the street. We have a new, which includes sponsoring a new summer event series. We are continuing our business incubation and supporting BIPOC business owners looking to operate on the marketplace. And we work closely with the Howard Center Street Outreach Team and BPD. We meet weekly to discuss some of the challenges in our downtown. And as always, parking, which we know is an emotional issue. We're always working with DPW on that. What to expect from us in terms of business development citywide. We're expanding our technical support classes, loan education. We're marketing is targeted to BIPOC and women-owned businesses. We have the summer and winter markets. Love Burlington, the revolving loan funds, which we will continue. And recruitment, retention, and workforce and real estate support. Again, on workforce development, we're helping parents re-enter the workforce. As I said, we're doing our second pilot project with Let's Grow Kids as a workforce training, and we're hoping to launch our own this fall, or planning to. We are anticipating, given the new legislation coming out of Montpelier, that many of our families might not need scholarships, but the problems and the weaknesses in the industry will show up in the form of capacity. There will be a surge of demand for childcare. Once some of this additional funding comes through the state, we anticipate that it will financially make more sense for both parents to be in the workforce and increase the demand on that industry. And we're seeing a reduction in some of those spots right now because of the teacher-child ratio that they can't keep right now because we're having trouble staffing. So we're really focusing on that, and we're also working right now with Forbital Factory in the South End, and trying to hopefully reach an agreement to structure and launch a sewing training program, which we've had a lot of interest in. This is the Early Learning Initiative budget, where, as you can see, the capacity grants, we're anticipating, hoping to get 500,000 out to help stabilize the existing programs we have, to help support workforce training in the early childhood field. Scholarships I left at approximately the same. Again, it depends on when the state's new legislation actually takes effect and when their CCFAP numbers actually change. That might take a while, and that might bleed into our next fiscal year by the time we really see those impacts. In terms of the budget for citywide business support, we are, as you see, very staff heavy. And that is definitely, we're not changing any of our staffing. We are fully staffed right now. You'll see we did reduce some of our expenses as best we could, and hoping to capture some revenue from those markets. And this next one is the budget for the Church Street Marketplace. This year, we are recommending to council a 5% increase in the common area fees that fund the Church Street Marketplace. That's the first increase since 2016 or fiscal year 17. And that is just to try and keep up with inflation and cost of living increases on staffing. Otherwise, the balance of this budget remains relatively the same. All right, that was my speed round.
Great. Thank you, Garth. Okay, final set of questions for Garth. Okay.
The commission said about the increase. Commission.
Oh, the commission approved the increase and now it comes to council.
I do believe that CEDO, REIB, and your department need to sit down on our workforce.
Yes, and we have. I mean, Director Pine and I meet every week And right now, we're focusing on the childcare industry because that's where our funding is, but I don't disagree with you. Also, you could include BED because they also have a workforce development manager in the Burlington Electric Department. And I think we're all approaching it from our perspectives. And we do have a plan actually to sit down with our grants team and coordinate applications for grants and if we can find synergy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Bartlett.
When Director Ward was here on one of the other budget nights, he had indicated that the graffiti removal, was that on your budget?
So, no, I have helped coordinate the response to graffiti. And so I'm involved in it, and part of my involvement started with, we used ARPA funds to try and address the graffiti that post-pandemic was. And I know it's still there, a lot of it. So we did arrange for some funding for Director Ward's department to hire more seasonal staff for that. As one of my peers mentioned earlier, the winter season is tough. And we need to work a little more on some of our private property owners. We can't just go up to buildings and start spraying chemicals on them ourselves. So some of our private property owners also need to be involved in taking care of their properties. But we are working to get that team out there this summer to do the best they can at the moment. The marketplace manages their own graffiti and graffiti removal as they're able to. But yes, I do recognize the problem.
And I would just, in response to the ask of private property owners, they'll tell you that if there was an increased public safety presence, they wouldn't be having the graffiti there in the first place, so.
How did you know that's the argument?
It's like a chicken and egg thing, and so maybe something what the city can do to help get rid of the graffiti.
The egg is covered with graffiti.
Yeah. So.
I will say we do, Chief Murad has dedicated 2 officers to the downtown this summer. It's 40 hours a week, and I am getting a lot of positive feedback from the business owners on that. Just the visual presence, even the cruisers parked on the intersections, I think has an impact. So I'm feeling like we're turning that corner. So I'm really hoping this season will be a good one.
I am as well. I've gotten that feedback too.
Yeah.
And I'm really encouraged about it. This season with graffiti, though, I think we still have to stay on, and it seems like any graffitiable service, as soon as it becomes available, is used as a canvas by somebody. And there are certain tags. It's like, if I could find that person, I'd actually get them into a restorative process and get them removing graffiti for us.
Yeah.
So anything we can do to, I guess, my sort of grant at this budget season is to get more, as many resources.
Okay.
Councilor Bergman.
Thank you. I'm wondering whether the business development program is doing anything on employee ownership businesses and with the employee ownership opportunities center that has been around, actually was created by the city.
Yeah, we do some work trying to also bring businesses together in a cooperative structure. And maybe I'll let Assistant Director Clavel address some of that.
Yeah, the speaker series that we did, one of the businesses that got the most attendance was the Oak Street Co-op right around the corner from you. And Matt Kropp was there talking about how they structured that deal and purchased that property with the help of residents. And so we have a lot of interest from businesses who have scheduled meetings with Matt to learn more about employee ownership options coming out of that. But we work pretty closely with Matt. He's part of our Micro Business Alliance and send people his way whenever they're looking to explore different models.
Excellent. As a member of that co-op, I'm pretty happy about that. So keep up that good work. Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing more hands online. No more. Oh, Councilor Jake, sorry.
Yes, and I believe that Councilor Barrow, we're talking about that. Maybe, there's process, the whole process, every day almost, which is good. But at the same time, the private sector is not waiting for this. The private sector already have their plan moving forward. And I don't know if you're having conversation with Ernie Palmolo or BCA, what do you call it?
Burlington City Arts.
Yeah. No. Business association.
BBA. The BBA, yes, with
Yes.
Kelly, yes.
I mean, they're cooking something beautiful.
They are.
And I thought that it's in collaboration because we're working with them to get it started.
Yes, and I can address the Burlington Business Association's plan, which does involve financial support from the Pomerleau Foundation, would help to get graffiti removal products into the hands of private property owners. There's a specific product that we use that its name is World's Best Graffiti Remover, and it really is. And also trying to educate them on removing graffiti and putting an anti-graffiti coating on their surfaces, on their buildings and properties. Yes, absolutely.
And on top of all of that too, I think creating graffiti arts.
Yes.
Displays,
Yep.
all of it. And I think that's a great sum of the city need to sign on. It's gonna be great. Yeah. I'll send you a couple of things and facilitate some.
Great.
That's all.
I'd appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I'm not seeing any more hands, so I think with that, we will say thank you to Tara. And I think there's no objection. We've completed our business for the night and we will adjourn at 8:41 p.m. Thank you all for sticking out this marathon.